Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, wherever you are, welcome on Channel S with Faith Inspired. This is a new beginning for us, and it's really about looking at individuals and their efforts through their faith in contributing to the community that they live in the professions that they are in. Inshallah, through this journey, we'll get to meet some fascinating people, men and women, young and old, who are living in this part of the world, in Great Britain today, and making a big and important difference to not only our community, but the wider community, and especially inspired by the faith that they belong to on a day-to-day basis. So let's find out who the first person is. Today we have Iqbal Nasim, CEO of National Zakat Foundation. It's a very well-established organization. We're going to talk to him much more about not necessarily his organization, and more about who he is, and where he is, and what's he looking forward to, if you like. Iqbal, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
On behalf of Channel S, I would like to thank you. I'm sure your family is probably bearing with the fact that you're here and not at home, if you like, or not in the office. So really grateful to you for being here. Now, let's get to know each other, I guess. Let's find out a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about your primary days. I'm not sure if you were born here or you were born somewhere else and then ended up in the UK.
Yeah, so I was born in London, and I'm the oldest of three siblings.
Okay, so three brothers and sisters, you're the oldest.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. So primary life, where did that begin then?
So it was in kind of mainly in South London. Like I grew up in firstly I was actually in Kent for some years, and then, and then in Southwest, and then in South.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then in Southwest London, so around the kind of Wimbledon sort of area.
Yeah.
Wimbledon, Merton Park, Morden area. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how was school life? Can you remember much of primary school? It's not easy.
Yeah, no, not easy to remember much. I remember one thing, which is when I was quite young, we had a pretty strict sort of teacher in our class. And
strict?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things I remember was one time I made some comment in class as a young boy.
How young was that then?
So probably 6, 7 years old, maybe.
Let's hear this comment now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you want to hear it or something. It wasn't a very nice thing to say about someone else, but I said it loudly in front of everybody.
Right.
And the teacher was very upset, so she sent me off to the kind of to the bathroom toilet area, but she said go and wash your mouth out with soap. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Obviously, the teacher will go and say that, right? So
yes.
She's not coming with you, but she's sending you off to the bathroom. And so, you're standing there and you're thinking, like, how am I supposed to do this, right? And so you're kind of like touching your fingers on the soap and then touching it on your tongue and stuff.
Right.
But it was funny, but when I think back to that time, that incident does stand out for me.
Yes.
Because it was like your sort of, the biggest admonition you received, at school. But maybe it taught me some lessons.
I can't tell you about the admonitions I got in school, and it wasn't even in this part of the world, actually. So did that soap really, it seems like you remembered it very well.
Yeah.
Did you have to follow it through, actually?
No, so that's the thing. So it's like, they just sent you off to go and do it.
Yeah.
But then as a young kid, you feel like there's no one there, but you feel like you've been sent to go and do something, right?
Yeah.
So you're in this weird kind of situation where you have to then go back and say, yeah, I did it,
Yeah.
So it was a kind of halfway, I obviously didn't kill myself, but I was, and I'm not sure if it was particularly legal or what she did, but
yeah,
anyway.
That's an interesting thing, actually. What was your favorite subject at primary level, which
probably
is not
maths.
necessarily, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I remember I was probably quite competitive, to be honest, in class.
Okay.
So really super competitive, actually.
MashaAllah.
Sometimes with maths and stuff, especially.
That definitely is a quality of faith, to actually not only compete, but to compete in ihsan, in a great way.
So I remember, because there was I remember also from that time, that was when we were very young, I had to be, I felt like I had to be the first person to get to the kind of 13 times table. So usually go up to 12, right?
Wow.
And then they had this kind of special thing, like who can do the 13 times table?
Please don't ask. I'm not going to compete.
No, don't ask me either. But so I remember that was another memory of being the first one to kind of complete that, on the chart in the front, everyone was kind of, yeah.
MashaAllah. So did maths continue to flow, if you like,
Sort of. So I did maths until A level.
We'll come to that.
Yeah.
We'll come to that. What about in terms of family and Were you able to did you live very close to the school, so were you able to get to school yourself, or you had mum or dad or someone taking you to school?
No, yeah, for most of our upbringing, like my mum would drop us off basically, because it was kind of a sort of a little bit of a distance.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like not quite convenient through public transport.
So your mum, in terms of going to primary school physically, your mum played an important part to that physical journey, if you like.
Yeah.
I'm sure she played a massive part to everything else, just like our parents do.
But that's actually it's interesting you brought that up, because because
it's a big sacrifice.
It's a big sacrifice. Number one, you realise that when you become older and have your kids yourself, and also you realise that actually that time is quite an important. That just those journeys, we achieved a lot in those journeys actually.
Wow.
So a lot of surahs I learned in those journeys, and a lot of just by listening to the tapes and what have you.
Yeah.
So I remember she used to make sure that we maximise the time, basically.
Wow. Okay.
So she would all be like testing us, checking this, checking that, whatever, and like learning surahs and this and that, and so I think it was an important time, because maybe it's like a 15-20 minute drive or whatever, there one each way. So actually that time is quite important, because sometimes when you're at home things are like really busy. When you're in the car, you're in contained sort of space. You can't run off anywhere, and everything. There's nothing else to do other than get there, right? So, so I remember that was quite that was something we used to do.
Well, surahs. Speaking of surahs, really, Juz Amma is probably the one that we all try to pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was at that time? You're talking about 6, 7 of that age, going with your mum, and then your mum making sure that you memorize. Which did you find was to be the hardest surah for you at that age, at that time?
Yeah, that actually amongst the 30th juz, one of the hardest ones I found at the time was Surah Al-Bayyinah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find it quite a little bit, because there's some words in there which are a bit different from kind of elsewhere.
Yeah.
So lam yakun alladhina kafaru min ahli al-kitab, etc.
Yes.
So I remember that was quite a tricky one. Although it's interesting that now that's one of the ones that I often think about quite a lot, because it's actually the last chapter in the Quran that mentions Zakat.
Yeah.
And there's some important kind of things around that. So it's one that I end up quoting quite a lot nowadays as part of my work. Yeah.
So was there any incentive from your mum at that age in terms of when you were trying to memorize those surahs? Was there any gifts or anything like that your mum was using to kind of like a carrot rather than the stick behind the carrot?
Yeah. No, alhamdulillah, like it certainly wasn't kind of a fear-led sort of thing, but I can't remember specific material kind of incentives, to be honest. I think just the general kind of, the usual kind of things. But yeah, alhamdulillah, and from a young age actually, we, from an age of 9, 10 years old, like we used to study Arabic at home as well.
Sure.
So my mum actually had enrolled us initially in a local madrasa, but she wasn't satisfied with what the quality of what was going on there. So she asked the imam to come to our house on a weekly basis for more kind of private attention, if you like. So then that arrangement carried on for about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's dedication.
On a weekly basis. So I did a lot, all my Arabic studies I did in that way actually.
Good. I mean, that's just a glimpse of primary life, but I'm sure that was very important.
Oh, yeah.
And now I know that for parents, you now probably are a parent yourself, secondary and college, and that that's a massive step for anyone. So how was secondary life? I mean, for me, it was one of the most memorable time of my life to date. How was it for you, secondary, college life?
Yeah. No, alhamdulillah, I remember very enjoyable, and very enjoyable. And obviously, again, it was quite, from an academic perspective, it was quite intense though as well.
Was the timetables much more bigger then? Did you get to the 17th
No, it was like, alhamdulillah, I went to, I had a scholarship to go to a good school, mashallah.
Sure.
And it was quite academically quite competitive as well. And there were definitely from home, like there was a drive about exceeding. So alhamdulillah, me and my siblings, like we did exceed, mashallah, at each stage of our academic kind of.
Was there a competition between the three?
Not as much, because obviously it's like your different age groups and stuff.
Okay,
but in terms of like your peer group at school and stuff.
Is there a big difference between?
So we're about we're just 2 academic years apart from each other.
Okay.
So I have a younger sister 2 years below, and then another brother 2 years below.
So did they benefit a lot from you in regards to getting the homework and getting the highest marks, because big brother was like kind of
they will
doing their essay or something like that?
To a certain degree, but they will obviously deny that, right? Yeah.
Oh wow. What about friends within secondary life? Can you remember any of them, and were they important for you?
No, I think they were important. And it was actually quite an interesting time because, you know, when you become more, as people are growing older, then you become more conscious about kind of, from a social perspective, like the kind of, if you like, the do's and don'ts as far as being a Muslim is concerned. Yeah. So, but I did find that at school, like, you were still able to kind of have really good relations with sort of, with others, like in school.
Yeah. Without
necessarily having to then that cross over into, let's say, after school kind of things, which as you become older, become kind of more and more problematic typically over time. So, but yeah, no, definitely. And there was a good bunch of like Muslims as well, like a small number, relatively small number, but a good bunch of Muslims. And we used to kind of organize ourselves for, you know, prayers and Jummah and whatever else. And we used to have a Muslim assembly actually as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How often was that then?
Every week.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, every week or every other week, yeah. So when the normal kind of assembly was taking place, they would have like other faiths could have their own assemblies, basically. So I would often run like the Muslim assembly at school.
Okay, okay. And did that add value to the journey that you've kind of gone through and perhaps are in now? That, you know, that whole period at secondary school and being able to be engaged with faith-led space and activities and inspiration and encouragement.
Yeah, definitely. So I think another thing my mum kind of would do with us from a young age is to ensure that we were taking responsibility for things. So actually from a young age I was managing like a weekly football kind of session for like brothers basically in the local area. That was again from the age of 10, 11 actually until again 19, 20. So it carried on for a long time. And also from a young age we used to do like a weekly newsletter. So it was a newsletter we did called the An-Nur newsletter. Okay. It was just a one A4 piece of paper, 2 sides. And we would, you know, we would kind of make sure, my mum would kind of set it and stuff. We would try and contribute article, this, that, whatever. We would get it printed off. And then initially, like every Jummah, we would drive, in the holidays and stuff, we would drive around and I would go and deposit them at the various mosques and stuff.
Brilliant. We're going to come back to continuing a bit more about maybe college as well as uni life, which are very important. So we're going to take a small break and we'll come back to this interesting brother with us. Welcome back to Faith Inspired. We've been talking to the CEO of National Zakat Foundation, Iqbal Nasim. We're talking about his life. We started discussing about secondary school. We're going to find out a bit about college and university. At the moment, it sounds like he's never got up to anything. So we're going to find out a bit more now. Iqbal, primary seems like a very important part, and then secondary, and you were quite involved and engaged within the space of your school to be faith inspired, to kind of inspire other people and to be actively involved. And your mum was quite important in this journey again, you're saying. What about, were you in a sixth form or you went to a college?
Yeah, so it was a sixth form.
Okay.
Yeah, of the same school basically. So that kind of continued. And alhamdulillah, actually in my last year of school, I was like they appointed me as the vice captain of school basically, they called it, you know, like a vice head boy. The joke at that time was that basically like I was the token brown person. You know? they would always have the
BME stat.
Yeah, exactly. So the vice head boy, vice captain, they would just always make sure it was like a South Asian basically.
All right, okay.
But anyway.
So was that almost like, all right, I don't mind, you know, I'm in the picture in that sense of the word.
Yeah. But no, it was good, alhamdulillah. It was good as an experience as well, like in terms of from like a leadership standpoint or whatever.
Yeah. So sixth form was in the same place, so it's kind of more or less similar. What about university? University is very different, isn't it? So being this competitive young man, mum's pushing like mad, memorizing the 13 times table at the age of 7, 8. I'm sure that went up much more. You tell us about university. Where did you end up going to?
So alhamdulillah, I went to Cambridge.
Okay.
And I studied economics there. So 2 years economics, and then in the third year, there was an option to switch to management studies, which I did, because I didn't actually enjoy economics at university at all.
Oh, yeah. I would have shaken your hands, because I had a module of university economics. It was just too much for me.
But management I really enjoyed.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was heavily involved in Islamic society as well. So I ended up I became the treasurer of the Islamic society within 3 months or something, because the person who was doing it kind of stopped. And then because I was doing economics, apparently that was the only qualification you needed, right? So, so then I became the president as well of the Islamic Society in my last year.
Right. Enjoyed that?
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
And still in touch with the ISOC
I am actually,
as an alumni?
Yeah,
I am.
Actually, I had founded an organisation which I'm Then I stopped being part of it, and I got back involved with it again recently, called the Oxbridge Muslim Alumni.
Okay, so
the idea was
Oxford University and Cambridge together.
So the idea was to try and keep Muslim graduates of Oxford and Cambridge kind of
in touch with each other.
Yeah, which has it's had its ups and downs over the years.
Yeah.
But now actually a lot more effort is going on to try and really make that into a properly functioning network, because it's obviously quite powerful, kind of has a lot of potential to do good.
Good. So finished at Cambridge. Good result.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah,
good.
Alhamdulillah.
Competitive result.
Alhamdulillah.
It was better than me, I'm sure. I didn't even go to Cambridge. So
No.
yeah. So in terms of work, where did you end up? Everybody would assume a Cambridge graduate, a Muslim, and a Cambridge graduate combined somehow is something exceptional.
No,
where did you end up with work?
Yeah. So whilst I was at university, I did internships at an investment bank, and then they gave me a job offer to start after I graduated. But I asked them to take a few months out because I wanted to go to abroad. I went to Jordan for 7 months after I graduated to just have more intense Quranic and Arabic studies. And then I started work in April 2006 at one of the investment banks in London.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about those 6-7 months in Jordan.
Yeah.
What were you doing? What do you feel that you achieved through those 6-7 months? Because sometimes to be away from family and the most closest one to a different part of the world, and to be trying to to be engaged in very focused and intense studying.
Yeah.
What did you study and what did you achieve?
Yeah. So actually, while I was at university, I started. Then in my first year at university, I started formally memorizing the Quran properly. So I wanted to finish the whole thing, yeah? So I did half at university actually, and then I finished the rest in the 6-7 months when I was there. So that was one of the things, to try and finish.
So you've managed to finish your hifz during that trip to Jordan, basically. I'm sure your mum must have been like over the moon.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, yeah.
Super over the moon.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So
what about your dad?
Yeah, obviously my dad is obviously a big.
We talked a lot about your mum, which is fair enough.
No, so I think he obviously, as all that.
So he was almost behind the success of the child, behind the success of the mother, that kind of thing.
No, so I think typically in South Asian families, in terms of in recent kind of history, like the dad is obviously providing, right, and the mum's just doing the rest, kind of thing, and that's roughly speaking what the setup was. Although he would spend a lot of time with us, of course, in terms of especially things like maths and English and our work and helping us with that kind of thing as well. So, but he was very busy, working and what have you. So. And definitely always encouraging. So I think that between them have always had kind of high ambition, high hope for us, but within kind of reasonable kind of bounds. So you can still, So alhamdulillah, yeah.
So both mom and dad were involved in this journey, of course.
Yeah.
And so in terms of from the finance sector in the quote-unquote mainstream sector, what led you on to moving on? Why did you move on?
Yeah, so I spent 5 years there, and then I think I got to a stage when I was doing that work that I felt, why am I doing this, basically? What is the fundamental reason as to why I'm here? And certainly for a good part of that 5 years that I spent working, I felt that my learning and my development, my exposure to different things was very significant, right? And I took a lot out of that. But then after a while it became the only reason I'm doing this is for the money, and I was being paid very well, obviously, for what I was doing, relative to most kind of careers, because that industry pays very well. But I felt that that's not me, basically. My heart, based on what we've discussed as well, my heart was always in kind of social/community sort of issues. And I think more importantly, and obviously as that journey has gone on, it's more a consideration of as a Muslim, as someone who is committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what exactly am I doing for him?
Yeah.
And sometimes we can confuse.
Which is a very big question.
Yeah,
really. What's the purpose of me being here? And if it's not been answered through what you're saying, how do we answer it?
Right. So the Quran sort of differentiates between, or let's say there's certain levels, yeah? So one thing is to do the basics and the obligatory kind of matters, yeah? And to be a Muslim in a sort of technical sense almost, right? And to fulfill certain minimums. But then there's also this idea of struggling for the path of Allah, striving for the path of Allah, right? Taking an advocacy, leadership, representative role, being an influence, a positive influence for others, yeah? Like the dua, for example, in the Quran, where we say, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنْ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. So there's a dua here, which is like the last verse of a series of verses describing the qualities of the servants of the Most Merciful, where we say, we ask Allah to grant us through our spouses and offspring the coolness of our eyes, and then to make us leaders for the righteous. Yeah. So it means that it's interesting because you're asking for a secure and a comforting home life, which really is a necessary condition of being able to then be out there and being a leader for taqwa, right, for God consciousness in society. So that's, and for me it was a question, well, what am I doing about that? Like, if that's something we should be asking for, if I look at my life, like, I'm not sure my life is reflecting this high aspiration that the Quran is driving us towards. So as a result of that, I decided to leave and try and commit myself to basically, da'wah, Islamic work, etc. Yeah.
So then National Zakat Foundation, now were you with it from the inception or a bit later on, and what is National Zakat Foundation?
Yeah, sure. So I was pretty much with it from the inception, like just a few months after it launched. Then I became like the first full-time project manager. National Zakat Foundation is basically the only Zakat-focused organization in the entire country, actually. And our focus is on collecting and distributing Zakat transformatively within the United Kingdom.
So from the UK, for the UK?
Yeah, so we're the only Zakat-focused organisation and the only one that focuses on distributing Zakat within the UK.
Sure. I mean, this is probably maybe a little bit of a stereotype that NZF started breaking because most of our assumption, particularly for the first generation, was the idea of Zakat being sent, quote unquote, back home.
Sure.
And we're second, third generation. This is home. We should be as comfortable and as contributing. And Zakat, amongst the 8 categories of Zakat, one is to be able to collect it and also distribute it from the very place that it was collected from. So what kind of work are you engaged in through using Zakat here in the UK?
Yeah, so right now, most of the focus over the years has been poverty alleviation, economic empowerment amongst Muslims in this country. And there are thousands of Muslims in this country who are Zakat eligible and who are in actually quite difficult circumstances, who have a right upon us to really make sure that they are well supported. And the reason for that, it's important for us to realise, the reason isn't just because, they're in difficulty, let's just help them and that's it. The reason is because, as Muslims, if we fail to actually fulfill our responsibility towards those Muslims who are amongst us when they're in desperate times, that has a big impact on their Islam. That has a big impact on their commitment as Muslims, and that's actually one of the underlying wisdom behind why Zakat is supposed to be given to those who are in difficulty, in poverty.
Thank you very much. Finally, we don't really have that much more.
Sure.
We would have loved to have taken more from you.
No problem.
From this life of primary, then secondary, college, university, working in the mainstream finance sector, and then trying to contribute to the wider Muslim community and the community as a whole here, particularly through Zakat, what would be that one word of advice or some advice that people out there watching this can take from yourself?
Yeah, so I would say usually when people ask me this, I have a very simple kind of proposition to them. I say to them that you agree and we know that life is very, very short, that very soon we'll be standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we will be accounting for ourselves. Just imagine if Allah gave you the equivalent of, quote unquote, 10 minutes at that time to talk and to present to Him what exactly you were trying to do for His sake. Yeah? What is your excuse in front of Him as to why He should bestow His mercy upon you to allow you into paradise?
Wow.
What is it that you would say? And then write that down.
Wow.
Yeah? Write it down, just 2, 3, 4 sides of whatever A4. Write down what you would actually say to Him. Yeah, because what happens in this life is that we bluff ourselves and we bluff each other. Yeah, we always our intentions are hidden under all sorts of I don't know what, right? But if you can just get yourself into the mindset that I'm going to stand in front of Allah, I'm going to speak to Him, and what am I going to say and that this represents my manifesto, my effort. When you do that and you get yourself into that mindset, all the other considerations and excuses that we bring out, right? They kind of fall aside. Because we know at that time that all of that just sounds silly to even say, right? So I think that's it's a very powerful thing, because when you insist that someone writes it down, they know that they can't bluff, right? It's not like they just kind of blag and make something up, basically. They need to put something down as if those pieces of paper would come back out at that time and you actually read from them. So I think that acts as a very strong filter for then people to realize what's the bits that I'm doing in my life, right? What am I doing that's useful and not useful? What are the things I can just cut out that actually, to be honest, they're not for Allah, they're not serving any material purpose, nor are they serving any hereafter purpose. They're just waste of time, So get those things out of the way. And then look at what we are doing, how we can strive and struggle as best as we can, so that all of our moments are for Allah. So that's really the key.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. We ask Allah to forgive us unconditionally, because we are all in need of His forgiveness. And if we were to use our good deeds to answer to Him, we will be short by miles and miles. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us unconditionally. Thank you very much, Iqbal Nasim, CEO of National Zakat Foundation, for being with Faith Inspired.
Jazakallah khair.
Dear viewers, we had a very exciting session with Faith Inspired, a really meaningful interview with the CEO of National Zakat Foundation, Iqbal Nasim. We will be bringing other guests, so don't go away. Keep an eye out for the next guest, and I'm sure we will all be inspired to do more with our faith.